So the Rebbe is explaining here the process of Ilu v'Olu in order to contrast it with Yesh Ma'ayin. So what we're pointing out is the contrasting properties of Ilu v'Olu. On the one hand, the Ilul's distance from the Olul. On the other hand, the Ilul's investment in the Olul. So much so that the Olul produced by the Ilah is of the same stuff, ultimately, as the Ilah, notwithstanding its vastly lofty and elevated state compared to the Olul, compared to the effects distance from the Ilah, from the cause. So likewise, Vayehi, moving Gamkein, after giving the moshel of the mazel, the sweetness in the mazel and the sweetness in the fruit, in the apple, and the various stages of Ilu v'Olul through which that process devolves. Another example.
Which line are you beginning? The line that begins with which word?
It begins with Sha'ila Yesh L'Kirav L'Olul. It's almost 3/4 way through the Ois. On page 69, if you have my sefer, but many of you don't. So it's 2/3 down. Do we all have it? Everybody has the place? Yeah?
Yes.
What's the first word of the line?
The first word of the line is Sha'ila Yesh L'Kirav L'Olul. Middle of the line. It's about 2/3
13 lines from the bottom.
Depending on what people have, Chaim. They may have a different... if you have from the Hak directly, it's a different layout than the Sefer. I think. Maybe not. Yeah? Good? Okay. So we find the same phenomena we're describing now in the other Ilu v'Olul illustrations, also with the Rav to the Talmud. On the one hand, the Seichel that the Talmud receives, as you pointed out earlier, it's a whole different world from the way the Rav entertains this concept and Bachlal concept. Still, different world, relatively speaking, but not in absolute terms. But still, the Rav doesn't produce the Seichel Yesh Ma'ayin to give to the Talmud. He's not giving something Yesh Ma'ayin. He's giving something of himself. Fundamentally, it's from himself, which means Kiruv. It means this is what Kiruv means. Kiruv means when the self is being given. But what I have and what I am, what I have produced from me, is in some way radically reduced through all of the process of Tzimtzumim described earlier before, the whole process from Chachma bin all the way down to Malchus, the final word, but it's still me. So Derech Kiruv.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yeah.
With regards to Hashem and the Tzimtzumim he created for this process, the Alter Rebbe is speaking about now in Tanya how Hashem had to set himself aside, which we're saying now is different, saying in this mashal of kind of containing the self. By Hashem, it's speaking about how he set himself aside for this process. I don't know about his essence, his atzmus, because that's conveyed, but his infinity is set aside.
So go on.
But we're just saying now about the Rav how he's contracting himself, whereas Hashem there's this process. I mean, maybe I don't understand it fully, but how he's setting himself aside, so to speak, to allow this process.
Right. So for the Rav, the process for the Eibishter it's be'in aroich, and for the Rav it's not be'in aroich. But we'll get to applying this to the Eibishter also. The Maisa is that when he says tzimtzum, with regard to the Eibishter, it's tzimtzum oirei hagadol. It's the oir that's being the tzimtzum. And the Moshel still stands. The parallel still stands because for the Eibush to produce oil, ultimately it's not atzmos, and that's a chiddush also on some level of yesh ma'ayin, even the oil.
By the Rav, it's not yesh me'ayin.
No, but the Rav it's integral to who he is.
Right.
Rav, a nefesh produces seichel from the koich hamaskil. That's how we are wired. That defines us. The Eibishter doesn't have to reveal oil, so that really once the oil is revealed, then the whole ilah v'olol process kicks in, which we parallel. You follow? But there should be the union of oil b'chlal altogether. Mitzad atzmos, it's actually on one level impossible, because as oil means revelation to something other. That's the whole definition of oil. It's a connection to otherness, and for atzmos there is no otherness.
That's the yesh me'ayin property in that.
Yeah, it's kind of the yesh ma'ayin property even of oil. The whole thing is out of nothingness. There's no justification for anything. It's fundamentally all impossible. It's at atzmos there was this decision that oil and dira b'tachtonim, the whole business. Really, there's one decision. It was he wants a dira b'tachtonim. And for that, all of these processes then come into play. But really, they're all not integral. But for the Rav, it's integral. It's all the mishalim that we bring. In other words, why are we even bringing mishalim of any kind? All the mishalim we bring are integral and natural. The Rav produces seichel, and he'll teach. This is not a yesh ma'ayin process for him. This is his life's calling. This is what he does. Right? So why are you bringing this as a moshel for atzmos? For the atzmos, it's not for atzmos, for Eibush, nothing is muchrich, nothing has to be. The answer is, that's true. But once he manifested this process, then that's what it is. And everything else mirrors that. You follow?
Yeah, so the muscle is in the technical aspect of it.
No, the moshel is post-choice. Yeah, right. And therefore in the technical aspect. But now that the Eibush has manifested oir, this union of Giloi, otherness, which contains within it ultimately potentially for this Eilamat, well, I won't talk about Eilam Gashmi because that's Yesh Ma'ayin, but that's manifested in Yesh Ma'ayin. Even we can see it's Yesh Ma'ayin. Okay, this is complex. The nice is that the Eir is see, we say the Eir is Me'in HaMoed. We don't speak generally speaking in general terms that Eir is Yesh Ma'ayin. Eir in Sof Baruch Hu, that's how the Alter Rebbe refers to it. Blessed be he, referring to the Eir in Sof. You don't say Chas v'Shalom Eir in Sof on a Nivra. Nivra is a Nivra. So on the one hand, we say Eir is Me'in HaMoed. Eir is the faithful and natural expression of the Mo'ed, of the luminary. But then the subtle point is that even the Mo'ed is not Atzmos. That's Eibish's choice to be a Mo'ed. I don't want to, since you're asking, we have to address it a little bit. It means part of the Eibish's choice is to express himself in such a way that expression is natural. It's part of the choice.
But it's not. Is that what
but sof kosof, it's not. It's still a choice. It's a choice that the expression be natural, but it's a choice. So that it's not muchrich. It doesn't have to be at all. No oir, no moir, no nothing. Just atzmos. And there's no reason why he had this choice, because reason comes way down the line. Seichel, chachma, bina, and logic, and time, and space, and level, and rank. That comes way down after oir and all the dargis and oir. So, as we say, there's no reason for this. It's, the best word we can use is free choice. And we emphasize the word free meaning free of any possible justification or value, because there are none. They're all created way later, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, it brings up questions about Am Yisrael being sourced in Atzmos, but I don't want to start a whole off-track conversation.
It's off track and it's on track, because we're all talking about one thing, the Eibishter and us. Neshamas are different. Neshamas is also a decision. Ultimately, everything is a decision. But the decision of neshamas is to express a part of himself, mamash. The nekuda atzmis of a neshama is certainly not yesh ma'ayin, and it's not even oir. It's not even the highest madregis in oir, which, as we're saying, is ultimately also kind of a yesh ma'ayin. The neshama is the exception to all of this. The etzem of the neshama is the Eibishter's decision. Of course, it's a decision. The neshamas don't exist without God deciding they do. But what's the decision? The decision is to invest a piece of himself, and that is so impossible to understand what that means, because we're talking about atmos here, but that's just the reality. Chelik elika mimal mamish. So the neshama is the exception to everything. So everything at the end of the day is nothing. It's only being created yesh ma'ayin, and even the say there's stalshalus. It's oir, and the decision to produce it, but the neshama is everything because it's a part of him. But still, even the neshama is a decision that the Eibishter decided. Olul b'machshava, the pnimius, as you learned to my body may go, pnimius ak, pnimius machshava, and then the Rebbe, just pulls back the curtains. Atzmusa yizbarach and finished. It's all probing, but it's still a decision. The Shamash Yisrael are not integral chas v'shalom to the Eibishter either. But it's a decision to give of self. Whereas Oid is a decision to reveal self. Giving of self, revealing of self. Projecting self. Oid is making the decision that self should be known by otherness. And the Neshamas is that the self should be invested, given in otherness. Kavayochel. It should be a neshama. It's something other, but it's a piece of him. Is that somewhat clear?
Yeah, I mean, in some way, yeah.
Sidova Setachten, huh?
Yeah.
Right, so we'll continue the Maimer. Yeah? So likewise, Varaya Luzeh, so the Raya, the manifested proof, the tangible proof, as it were, that the Seichel of the Rav, notwithstanding, it's a whole different world, and the Talmud has absolutely no idea, and is totally incapable of grasping, understanding concepts as they exist in the mind of the Rav. Still, notwithstanding this great distance, it's Bekiruv. The Rav is giving something of what he is, that's his Seichel, and therefore the Raya Shema Seichel Rav Nasi it's Latam but Muhus Seichel Davke. So the same Rav you brought before. If the Rav was fundamentally Be'ein Aroich, truly Be'ein Aroich, not B'derech Kira from the Talmud, then the Rav could give anything to the Talmud. It doesn't have to be Seichel. It could be anything that's totally out of the ken of the Talmud. But he can only give Seichel. He can't give him anything else, because that's what he is. He's a Bar Seichel. And the Talmud is the Bar Seichel, a very small Bar Seichel. So the Rav can give him Seichel. So he's saying that we can't give him anything, but Araya, where is it again? That from what's received by the Talmud is only Seichel. He's not giving any other substance because he doesn't have anything else to give. That's what he is. He's a teacher. He's a human being that has an intellect, and he's giving his deepest component. What's the deepest part of the Rav? Seichel. Likewise, as we go down the chain of all of the faculties of the nefesh, notwithstanding that Seichel and Midas are different worlds, they're different worlds relatively speaking, but it's still Ilah v'Olol. And one can produce only the other thing. The artist can only produce art. He can't produce something else. We go all the way back to the Koyach HaMaskil. The Koyach HaMaskil is this purely undefined source in the nefesh that has the ability to grasp truths. Shekeich hamaskil, and that's completely abstract and not defined to any kind of subject or truth, or scientific or discipline. Everything. It's a potential for anything and everything. But what? Anything, everything that is graspable. Not anything, period. You can understand everything, relatively speaking, or all things. The that potential to grasp truths, to intellectualize, to see, to perceive, is totally beyond a manifested seichel, a manifested idea, or the manifested properties of the way the intellect works, etc. We can't even define it. You can't define the keich hamaskil or grasp it because it's relatively limitless, because it can grasp and understand anything in potential, abstractions, any subject. But it's a keich hamaskil, that's something else. And when expressed, it will produce seichel. Again, we cannot grasp the substance, the muhus. The muhus means the stuff of the being of keich hamaskil. Not only can we not grasp it at its core level, this is a subtle distinction. I'll have to leave this. I need to think about this myself, exactly what this distinction is. The muhus of the muhus and the muhus of the mitzias. Okay, we'll leave that. Please leave that for me and me think about it if I'm able to come up with language to explain the distinction. All we experience is the seichel in our heads. We experience ideas that pop into our head that we think about, but we can't even. This is what he's saying. Yeah, we can't even trace. In other words, when it comes to seichel and midas, there's a process, an experiential process where from the mind an emotion is born. But the keich hamaskil is so removed it almost comes in a vacuum. An idea pops up into your head. We're not feeling the source of that. All the mind is filled is with the idea that we are now thinking. But that doesn't come in a vacuum. It comes from this keich hamaskil, the ability deeply within the nefesh to grasp ideas. And it's so deeply removed, so far removed from the actual seichel that we don't feel the welling up, the process. It just appears. We get the idea. I thought of something. But we don't even feel the source of where it comes. And there's distinctions in that which we'll revisit. I don't want to stop now as I think about it. But the point is, notwithstanding this great distance of the keich hamaskil, it's still bekiruv. It's still ilah va'olu. Keich hamaskil only produces ideas, nothing else. The fact that we feel this idea pops into my head, we know it didn't come in a vacuum. It comes from somewhere. We know that within me there's this power, this ability, this potential to understand. That's where the idea pops into my head, literally falls into my head in the conscious, I just had an idea. But I don't feel where the idea comes from. That's the muhus of the muhus, and that's the mitzias. The muhus of the muhus means we don't even know, we can't begin to define what this means. What is it? But we don't even feel the existence of it. You can have something, you feel it's there, you just don't know what it is. Here he's saying two things. That's the two things he's saying now. We cannot define the muhus of it. And not only that, we can't even feel that it exists. But it does, because we get ideas, and they don't just come from thin air. They well up from deeply within the nefesh. Clear? Muhus is what it is, and then we're not margish that it exists even. That's the two in Yonim. We're clear? Can't define it, simple language. We can't define keich hamaskil. We don't even feel the keich hamaskil. but it's what produces ideas in our head. So it's really distant, and yet it's bekiruv. It's still ila va'olam. So we can see how distant it is. This cause and this effect are really far apart, but they still cause an effect. And likewise, as we go down the line, the world of emotion, the world of intellect are two very different worlds. So it's a distant ilav olam. It's a distant cause. To go from words to from feelings to speech. So there's a big tzimtzum. That's what we're saying. There's a tzimtzum between, as it were, the cause and the effect. But still, it's close. To end up from keich hamaskil to the actual seichel is a big tzimtzum. The chelik hasidi that he described before. But the whole point is, so as much as we are appreciating now, we're learning now, and we're appreciating the great distance between the il and the olol, the keich hamaskil and seichel and bidus and dibur, etc. It's still il v'olol. It's cause and effect, which means shebayfen shel kiruv. It's a chain reaction. One thing will produce the other, and it won't produce something else. There's not an infinite gulf or gap between the cause and effect. If there was an infinite gap, then the cause could produce anything. It's infinitely beyond. But it's not. It's bound up to and wired to produce this result, even though the result is very far removed from the power, the cause that caused it to come into being, to emerge. We're not finished yet. We continue. Yeah.
Can one say that the keich hamaskil to the person's understanding, legabi the Eibishter, it's il va'olol, but legabi us, it's perceived like a yesh mi'ayin, even though it isn't.
Yeah, it comes out of nowhere. In that sense, it comes out of nowhere. But the seichel understands, our mind understands, and when the ideas pop into our head, we will say like came out of nowhere, but we understand it's not nowhere. It came from me, from my keich hamaskil. I just don't feel it. I can't define it. But I know that it just doesn't come in a vacuum. I know at least, without feeling it, I know at least that the human being, me, has the ability. There's this well here, this well of a reservoir of ability to understand things from where it comes. So it's a relative yesh ma'ayin, but the seichel understands that it's not. It's obviously ilav va'olol, right? But it's the best illustration of the distance, the greatest distance between cause and result, or cause and effect. The person's not going to say something like, a miracle. An idea popped into my head. Yesh ma'ayin. It's not a miracle. You thought of this, and it welled up from within you. Yesh ma'ayin is a fundamental miracle that has no justification, and lit mamish comes out of nowhere. All right. So continuing now, ilav va'olol, not finished yet. The matter is, so now we said the last point was there's a tzimtzum, because we're pointing out the great distance between, look at the cause, look at the effect of different worlds. How do you get from this cause to this effect? Through tzimtzum. So even though the tamshach of the olol is not from the etzem of the ilah, kima harase bilvad, like he said, like the 10th level, it's only a reflection of the cause, a giloy of the cause that will end up and is present even. Mislabish. In the effect, the etzem remains always removed. Remember the Mayan etzem hachachma, the examples we gave in the previous maimer, the keich haruchni of the tipa, the etzem aseichel, etzem hachachma, etc. The Mayan itself doesn't become the river. Only a ha'ora mikol mokem, nonetheless, but this ha'ora that the ilah, that the cause does produce, the Mayan does produce the river, that ha'ara is mislabish in the result, in the olul. V'yesh iskalu lo so olul be'ila, and then the two work harmoniously. And the cause is present in the effect. Hainu b'ha'ara sa'ila. Meaning to say the not the essence of it, but the ha'ara of the ilah, so that works together with the olul. So this is a very close relationship. Chachma bin have a close relationship. Seichel and midas have a close relationship. If a person would has a feeling, produce some seichel. Seichel, you have to have seichel to love something, to be in awe of something. So it's because you understand it. If the understanding would be just ripped out of the midah would just die. It won't continue existing. It needs the seichel to fuel it. So that's why that the drawing of the production of the result causes a change in the ilah. The cause is not the same as it is. If you look at the cause before it produces and starts the process, the Mayan, before it produces the river is one state, and it's different looking at the river now, from which it came, which is the ha'odah. That's the olul that's producing the ha'odah. Right, the cause of it is undergoing changes, producing, not producing, pristine on its own. Look at the koach hamaskil. We're not producing ideas; it remains there, latent and unknown. When the koach hamaskil is firing, so it's in a state of movement, and it fires and it produces an idea, ha'odah. So it's in a state of flux. It moves and changes when it's active. When it's not active, it's in a different state.
Does it diminish from the koach hamaskil?
No.
So in a certain extent, it's only changing b'shas the koach hamaskil is giving to the koach haseichel.
Right.
But the koach hamaskil doesn't change. The mayan doesn't change.
No, it doesn't become exhausted and depleted by producing the river, or the koach hamaskil doesn't become depleted by producing ideas. That's true. But
so it's
when we
not
say
like
change,
shefa.
When we say change, we don't mean change as in compromised, becoming weaker. Change is, however, it is changing. It's in a state of movement and manifestation and expression.
So it's not like shefa, that it's missing from the place that gave after it produced the seichel.
No, the term here is oyer, not shefa. Yeah. Correct. Excuse me. All right, so we'll continue, I guess, the next paragraph tomorrow.